All right, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How are y'all doing today? Dom, you're saying you have no audio. Can y'all hear me okay talking? Is the most important question. Yeah, I just transitioned off of that opening video, so hopefully you can hear my voice, but please let me know if you cannot. And I'll wait to get a response until we continue. Uh-oh. Okay, good. You can hear me. Whew. That fun little video, if you really want to watch our amazing little opening trailer, I'll drop a link in here. I had a lot of fun banging that together with some templates. Anyway, I want to welcome you all. We are here to talk about Confluence databases. The intention with this is to kind of deep dive into what databases can do for us and to take a look at some common use cases. And there is a link to our trailer if you very much want to see it. It's also the opening of most of the content I have. So we're going to talk about Confluence databases. This is a relatively new content type, and we'll start out like we normally do with some slides. So just introducing myself and the topic and idea, and then we'll jump into a live hands-on with Confluence Cloud Premium. Now I'll talk about it, but databases are available in every flavor of cloud. They aren't in data center, so sorry to DC folks, but you will get a good look at them. So we're just going to jump on in. We're going to talk a bit again about some concepts and ideas to make sure we're all level set on these basics and things. And then we're going to get hands-on. So first, a quick introduction. My name is Rob. I'm an Atlassian certified professional, and I also hold the only Confluence certification they currently have active, which is the ACA 920, and that's hopefully going to change soon, but I have 100% of them. I've been using Confluence about a decade, maybe a bit longer, and mainly for the use case of like internal documentation and project management. There are other ways to use Confluence, but in my experience, that's what I've happened to have needed to use it for. And I started using it because I was forced to. The company I joined happened to have it as a tool. Yes, Liz, I know your cats really like it for some reason. I should float my head on top of my picture. Okay. This might be more disconcerting, but I'll give it a shot. Emily, folks in the chat, let me know if this is too bizarre. Excuse me. So I have a lot of background with Confluence using it and also helping others use it. I suffered through learning a lot of these lessons, and I do my best at my organizations to share what I know so other people don't have to suffer. And that is why I create these online learning courses. I'll talk about Udemy Way at the end, but I have 31,000 students there. And then I also have this YouTube channel to help folks learn about Confluence, Atlassian, and Jira. Excuse me. My information is down in the bottom left as well. So please feel free to shoot me an email with questions. Okay, I've got a few hearts floating around and a few people say they love it. I don't hear anyone saying this is terrible. And there's more than 3 people in the stream. I'll put it back in the corner in just a minute. This is hopefully not going to become a thing. Please pop me an email. Please check out my website, etc. If you need help or have questions, I'll be happy to respond and see how I can help you out. Okay, let me get back down to my corner. There we go. Many of you have already found the chat. That is the best way to interact. So I can't see or hear you, unfortunately. So if you're comfortable, please pop into the chat, drop in a question, drop in a response to a question I ask, or help each other out. There are some folks in here who are regulars, and you'll see them jumping in more. I'll pick on Emily, for example. So please feel free if you want to engage. Please do that, but also if you don't feel like doing that, completely fine. I do find folks that engage will get more out of this, though, especially if you have questions. So please, you can either email me there. I'll have a form you can submit questions to, or you can drop it in this chat, and I'll do my best to answer them. And of course, if you like this, please like it and subscribe, but also, more importantly, share it with other folks who might use it. I guarantee you there's someone in your organization who can benefit from this type of learning or from this content, even if it's only parts of it. So please keep in mind other people around you can also benefit from this session or other ones that you attend. A quick agenda about Confluence databases. We're going to talk about this concept of like structured data and the importance of it a little bit, but then we'll talk about like what is a database in Confluence. And then we'll talk about parts of that database, things like columns, things like views, things like linking records. And then we're going to go do all of that live in Confluence Cloud Premium. So we're going to build a few databases together, And if there are examples from the audience, if you have some specific way you want me to try to build it, I can use that as well. But I can also make up a little scenario that I'll just come up with. As Emily mentioned, there is a Discord that we have set up. I'll drop the link right here. This is just a chat community. So in between these sessions, it's a place to go to share information and learn. But our first question, do you use Confluence databases and what for? And I'm just asking to see who has experience with them, what kind of use cases pop up. I tend to use them for project management because I tend to be a project manager. So I use them to track tasks and other things. Or DOMs using a 1 to 5 scale. If you're very comfortable with databases, you can put in a 5. And if you're not comfortable, you can put in a 1. And any number in the middle there. And that helps me understand just what is our comfort level, what is our experience. I tend to, like a knowledge database. Ooh, that's a very telling question, Sarah. A database in Confluence is a specific content type that we'll dig into. Justin for project management. Christian product doc lifecycle management. I also use it for rebuilding or re-architecting Confluence spaces. So I use it to document out all the content I have and what's missing. Debbie, you may put a 0. Alfonso and Debbie, I'll give you a shout out. Like, it's hard to step up and say, I have no idea what this is. I know nothing. So I appreciate you sharing that because that helps me help you or helps the group help you. Valerian's getting very precise. I would love to know how you got such a precise number. Sarah, that is a great question, though. We can use a Confluence database to track knowledge. And we'll talk about that as we go. Liz, it's not like a macro. A database is less like a macro and more like a whiteboard. Like that's the closest thing, in that it's a content type within Confluence that serves a particular function or fills a particular gap. They are essentially ways to organize information in Confluence that up until now you might have had to put into a table. JME, I don't know how to pronounce that. Another one. Awesome, Liz. All right. Now, I think of a database in Confluence as something between a spreadsheet or a table and a Jira project in terms of complexity. A table in Confluence is just a little spreadsheet, columns and rows, and you can't do a lot with them. You can put information in them, but you can't have things like, a status that lights up easily. You can't easily link it to resources. You can paste in a hyperlink, but there's no automatic connection. And then you also can't do other things like change how they're visualized and viewed. Valerian, a spreadsheet for Confluence, kind of. That's one way to think of it. Oddly, I've noticed that, let me get that up here. I've noticed that Google Sheets is starting to add features to make it look more like a Confluence database or maybe vice versa. So concepts that you apply to a spreadsheet can help you in a database, but there's limitations. They don't do very well with things like calculations. We can't do things like functions, if you're familiar with those in a spreadsheet. Instead, this is more about organizing and structuring our information and our data inside Confluence, which until the database came around was a lot more challenging. Now you'll see in this screenshot, we've got some things like rows and columns. These will look very familiar to our to our spreadsheet aficionados out there. And then each row is going to represent essentially a record, one thing. In this case, that thing is a research plan. And then each column is some data about that thing, the method we use, the objective we have for it. Oop. Christian, get back here. There we go. Some interesting background. This to me, when I learned this, I thought it was pretty cool, honestly. In that this was something developed by a partner. And then Atlassian said, hey, that's really cool. Let's do that. And so they pulled databases in. So a bit of a fun fact trivia. Where do we find them? I briefly mentioned they're available in Confluence Cloud right now, but are not available in Data Center. So that's that's a big hiccup. If you're in DC, you won't have databases at this point. I'm unaware of any plans to shift it over, unfortunately. But I've mentioned a couple use cases. And I've got to catch up on chat. Liz, not exactly smart links, no. Well, that is another content type. Uh, Again, my major use case is project management. When I have a light project, like a smaller project, I maybe don't go to Jira to build it out. It can take too much time. I don't need a Jira project or even an Epic. So instead, I build a database in Confluence. Or I've used it to organize Confluence spaces. I plan out the changes I want to make because I can suck in every page in Confluence into the database automatically. I can then go through and organize it and figure out what do I want to keep, what do I need to add, who owns each page. I've also heard of people using it as a customer relationship management or CRM tool. And this is because you can link databases between each other and share information. And I'll show you an example of this, but I might have one database called contact information and a separate database called company, and I can connect individual contacts to different companies to help share information between them. That's a little bit more advanced. Most people just tend to slam in a database and call it a day, but there are a lot of different ways we can leverage this tool beyond the three that I have just showed you. And again, my experience with these has brought me to these. I am sure there are different ways they can be used. Now, when we talk about databases, they do have their own permissions in Confluence. It's the same permission that is tied to the other major content types. So if you can make a page in a Confluence space, you can make a database. And as a reminder, that add permission also includes edit. So if I give this permission to someone, if I give it to Arlo, Arlo can come into the space and create databases or edit existing ones unless they're restricted. So if you can't make them, this might be why you might be missing this. The other thing to know about databases is they can be disabled in a space. So if you don't see the option to make one, you might have to go to your space admin and say, hey, is this even turned on? So creating a database is like creating any other piece of content. We'll do this live momentarily, but you just click the create button and you select database. And then it gives you this option for database setup. We have a few things we can do in here right off the bat, one of which is connected to either Jira or Confluence. And what this lets us do is connect it to a Confluence space or a Jira project to import tickets or content. So this is one way you can take a look at your Jira information, and I could see, say, a Scrum team doing this or some other group, but just pulling in these tickets to see them differently and work on them. Now, this will be data in addition to what's on Jira. So I don't, usually when I pull in a Jira ticket, it's a one-off, and it's just to link it to a other thing. But I wouldn't do my work on a Jira ticket inside a database. I would just personally go to Jira, if that makes sense. The ability to pull in Confluence pages I find very useful, and again, because I find myself manipulating and managing Confluence spaces quite a bit. Chad, you almost forgot about me? No worries, my friend. They're all recorded, so you can keep watching them even after the live ones are done. Isn't that amazing? Technology. Now, I also use this a lot to pull in information on Confluence content because I'm constantly thinking through how do I improve the Confluence space. So we can pull both of them in. Now, there are templates, and sorry, I'm making that sound because there are 4 templates that we'll talk about, and I'll show you these. To me, these are less templates and more starting points. For example, the empty default is just an empty database. So when I make a page, I don't consider the empty page a template. And these, in my mind, are less templates and more just like inspiration or ideas on different ways it can be used. So I'll encourage you to go in and take a look. And if you've got a second monitor or a different tab, pop this open and just see what these different templates are. I don't get much use out of these, and it might just be because I'm more comfortable with the system. But it is one way to speed up and create a database more quickly. Now, at the bottom, we do have an import option, and this will let you pull in, a CSV essentially. So if you have a great spreadsheet where you've already been tracking a project or something else, you can pull that whole thing into the database and just make it available. You don't have to retype it. So there is this option to make it a bit easier to get your stuff in there. Now, please don't be me. If you notice in this screenshot, a number of these databases actually a lot of this content just has untitled, example, untitled. Database names drive me nuts because they default to untitled database and then a number. And it's The name is kind of hidden in the top left, so you'll see this when we make one live, but please make sure you stop and rename these things. Liz is giving us an inside scoop that next quarter they're going to be renamed to Digital Vibes. Please cite your source, Liz. So please be better than me and actually name your databases. Not a dumb question, Sarah, at all. Where do I go to use this in Confluence? No worries, Sarah. We'll do this live together, but from a space, if you hit the Create button, there should be an option for Database. If you don't see it, it could be because you don't have the add permission in that space. It could be because that space has that feature disabled, or it could be because you're on Data Center, which doesn't have databases. Aha. Yeah, I thought that might be the case, Liz. And what I love about this is Emily and Chad both jumped in to help out our teammate here with that answer. Thank you both. So a follow-up question on databases. What is the most frustrating thing about them? And while we're contemplating that, I do have a quick survey about the topics we should work on and other things. It includes a question on, if you want to pursue a certification, which one should we look at? But also an open-ended question on how are these sessions going and what would you find more useful? So if you have a moment, it would help to fill that out. Chad, load times. I haven't seen a Confluence database take long to load. Kari, what are they for? That is a great question, my friend. I feel like they added this feature and there wasn't as much support on all of it. Justin, correct. They are not a spreadsheet like Google Sheets or Excel, so we can't do formulas or functions the way we can in a spreadsheet. They're more a container. And this is where, for me in tech, in my experience, there are terms like database or integration that mean different things to different people. So it's very important when we talk to people to be very clear what we're referring to. I even realized the title of this particular course could be misconstrued. Confluence database could refer to the content type, or it could refer to the thing that Confluence sits on top of to pull all of its data. Content from databases can't be found in the search. To clarify, Ronnie, are you referring to like a cell in a database not showing up in search, or like the database itself? Database to auto-add new pages from a space. Yes, Christian. There's a couple of features related to databases and whiteboards that I really wish they had to make management easier. This one feels like a solvable problem, though. Just what it sounds like you're saying is if I have a database listing my Confluence space and a new piece of content is created, add a new row with that page. So when we think about databases in Confluence, we have columns, and databases support different columns. And to clarify before Liz asks, I'm referring to the vertical part of a database, not to the giant stone things holding up the Acropolis. Sorry, Liz, that was a bit of a jab. There's 4 major types of columns. We have a basic column, and we'll talk about each of these. We have Jira and Confluence columns, and then we have info from other databases. So when I build out a database, I want to consider what should go in it, and that helps me figure out what types of columns do I need. Now, our basic columns are they're things that we can add very easily. It's things like text or a date or a number, and you can see the list here. Now, some of these do special things or have more features, and we'll take a look at this live. For example, the tag field lets me put in a list of discrete values that can be used. Think like statuses or a type of something. So people can pick from a drop-down a new item. User pickers are like a user picker in Jira. The person's name shows up. We don't just type it in. And then someone did mention smart links. They do show up inside Confluence. So that same idea of smart linking in information. Oh, interesting. Mateus, CSV import with more than 3,000 rows. I haven't stress tested. Chad, were you the one who helped me stress test how many child depths we can go to? Or was that one of the Justins? I forget. But I'd be curious, what's the maximum size for a database? I haven't seen anything documented. I'd be curious if we could make it scream. Sarah, yes, they probably could have made the terminology less confusing. And this is an interesting challenge with, this group in Atlassian. When we think of who is this database for, it's not necessarily for an admin or a super user or a very technical person. Atlassian has to look at the hundreds of thousands of people who use their products that aren't necessarily that technical. For example, the HR teams I work with, they know a database is a thing that exists, but when they hear Confluence database, they're not going to think the thing that supports Confluence. They're going to think this content type. And so that's where, for us as the folks who have a little bit more knowledge or background, it's kind of on us as well to help bridge that gap and to ask those questions and understand. Can't add a new record. Nuts. We can insert Confluence pages and Jira tickets in the database, and I can show you that, but it doesn't automatically suck them in. Chad, I forget the limit in Excel for cells, but it's like 2 million or something. I just struggle to believe Atlassian would allow a database that size. But I'd be morbidly fascinated to figure out what the upper limit is. And is it a limit by database or is it a limit by instance? So is it, say, 100,000 rows or 100,000 cells across one Confluence space, or is it across an entire instance? Widgets and what's-its and who's-its. Those make complete sense to Emily. I don't know what you're talking about. Everyone knows that widgets are the things that show up in Jira. Who's-its are the extra functionality that we get in a Confluence whiteboard, and what's-its are the things that show up in a database. And I hope no one believed any of that because I made it up based on those terms, but Emily's correct. There's a lot of terms that we see, and it's important that we understand them, and that's why I go through these slides at the start, so we all have the same nomenclature. When I say there are Jira and Confluence columns, we know what that means. Now, these particular columns let us interact with Jira and Confluence. I tend to use the page and live doc ones quite a bit. And these let us link to a page or live doc and then pull in information about it. Again, I use it a lot for architecting Confluence spaces, so I can pull in the content status directly into the database. I don't have to go look it up. I can also pull in other details about it. So the owner, the last update, etc. And a similar thing on Jira. I did not say the word. This word changed to work items. When I say it out loud, you'll hear a whoopsie sound effect because I'm trying to train myself not to say it. But this is Jira work items, not Jira iWords. But here I can pull in essentially a link into a Jira work item, and then I can pull in information off of it. So some fields I can pull back to the database to try and help. Justin, what are you talking about? I did not say the word. Okay, I'm just going to move forward. Thank you, Emily, for supporting me. I appreciate the defense. See, I'm getting better. Jirish. Oh, no. Now, the last type of column to me is the most confusing, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but it allows us to link databases together. And I'll talk more about this, and I'm curious what the group can find in terms of use cases. But the first thing we do is we link to another entry in some other database. Again, in a CRM, if I have a customer database, I might have a separate customer contacts database over here. And then I can pull in just the contacts between them. And the entry details is what lets me pull that in. So I might say, go find the contact column from some other database and pull in their phone number. And I can also then use this backlink in the other database to say, how is it being used or who is using it where? So it is a great way to share information between databases, and it kind of allows us to normalize a database. I'm vastly oversimplifying it, And if you're very, very bored, I'll drop hang on, I got to type this in properly. A Wikipedia link on normalization, but a very complex process to make sure our databases aren't redundant. And this is a much more advanced topic beyond Confluence databases, but this is what lets us break up our information and share it more easily multiple places. For example, I wouldn't want to recreate my customer contact information in multiple spots, so I just have it in one. Debbie, good luck. I hope it's all okay. If you need support, drop into that Discord and ask some questions. We got a lot of smart people in there who can help us out. So a question for the group: how are you currently tracking complex information? What am I doing now? I'm showing some of the search on the bottom of the screen. Am I? 2 words isn't the work item, but why a space? Why not, Liz? What else would you call a space? A room? Liz, it depends on the client. Screaming the word Gantt at us. Smartsheet, a day of the week, Jira. That is actually a good question. Oh, I think I know what I was doing. Thank you for letting me know. I made a whoopsie. Victoria's got a great question. What do you mean by complex? And this is, I intentionally left it vague. Because when I think of the information I'm storing, depending on who I'm talking to or the use case, I'll need different tools. And I like how Liz said it depends. I am trying to use databases more in Confluence just to learn how they're used. And this has helped me figure them out. However, I'm still struggling to find a really good universal thing. It seems to be much better suited for smaller individual use cases across teams versus something everyone will use. Now, in addition to all that content and all those columns and things, we also get different layouts. And this for me is where it's another step beyond a table and smaller than a Jira. We have 3 different ways we can visualize these databases. And this can help different individuals or different groups leverage that information. Now, the table is kind of the default view in my mind, and it looks like a spreadsheet. Very approachable. Most people know what a spreadsheet is and how it works. Although, I can't recall when I was introduced to spreadsheets. It must have been in high school or something, grade school. Excuse me. But if you know what a spreadsheet is, you know what this view looks like. It's useful for seeing all the records, again, in a tabular or a table format. And this is kind of my default just because it's my default. This is what I've always used, and that doesn't make it good, bad, or otherwise. But it does tell me I need to challenge myself to try other views, other ways of looking at it, like the board. Now, this looks similar to a Kanban board, and this particular one is broken down by the tag field. And we can see here we've got all the ones with the survey, all the ones in the interview tag, all the ones in observation, focus group, experiment, etc. So depending on the team I'm working with and how they work, Kari, enjoy the meeting, but this is going to be recorded, so jump on in. And of course, we'll see you in Discord. Victoria, good to see you as well. I am also thinking through in my head doing live sessions on specific use cases of databases. So if that would be interesting, let me know in the feedback or drop me a message in here. And if there's a specific use case you want to see, let me know as well. The one I'm thinking of is building a CRM because that is more complicated. It will require linking multiple tables. But if there's a specific way of using databases you want to see, let me know and I'll either make a video or do a live session where we can walk through it. Now, the board is good for letting us easily change a value. In this case, whatever this tag field is, the observation, I can just click and drag. And you'll also notice on it, I can just easily click add entry. So it's very easy for me to come in and just add new stuff directly to the database. April, we're we're getting there, my friend. I promise. Now you can save views, and this is another major bump up or another positive thing. I will set up different views for different people on my team. These views can then be filtered. So I only want to see the in progress. I only want to show, items that are assigned to a certain person. All of these different things. I have different ways of doing that and then saving the view like in a spreadsheet. Kath, I'm linking you a video I did late last year about using it as a project management tool. An approval chain. Interesting. We can't stop someone from moving things in the database, Liz. So I'd love to hear more about that. I assume the answer for most folks will be no. But do you use database links? So linking databases to each other. And again, this is the more advanced end of the use case. And this is one of the last things, April, we're going to talk about before we get hands-on in Cloud Premium. But these are something, again, that I happen to be struggling to use, if only because I haven't used them enough. And database links are what lets us share information between databases. In this example, I have contact information in this database, and I can pull it into different products here. And I can see product C is linked to Sally, and that their number is ACA, or maybe this is a certification or something. But then on the parent, I can also see where these people are being used. I can see Sally is linked to these two products. So this is a very simplistic example, but by connecting information here, it means I can update these things independently of each other. I can go and add more information or add a certification for Sally that will then automatically show up anywhere it's been linked in. Arlo, we cannot stop someone from changing a database other than like restricting it so they can't see it, restricting it so they can only see it but not edit, or just removing their ability to edit entirely. I can't do things like lock a column. Again, this is not a spreadsheet. And that's where that analogy breaks down. There are going to be a lot of things that we might be familiar with in a spreadsheet that straight up don't work in a database. Documentation disaster. And this is where, again, as someone setting this up, I need to realize the limitations, but also work with my team and train them. Most of the time, I haven't run into problems with people messing with databases. In the organizations I'm in, that might just be because people don't use them a lot, and that is an entirely valid reason. Oh no. All right. And my Zoom broke again. Wonderful. Anyway, to make a database, I'm just going to click on Create and then Database. And this will insert a new one. I can click on that Create anywhere in my content hierarchy or directly on a parent. Now, if you're missing that, you can go into your space settings. So this is the new UI. I'll click on the 3 dots next to the space. And then I'm going to look for features hiding under general. So it's possible that if that is turned off, databases just don't exist. So if you don't see it, you either need to turn it on. How's that saying go? Speak of the devil and they shall appear. Speak of documentation disasters and your technical writers will appear. Is that a new rule? Yes, April, you could restrict the page. And that's where if in your environment you have a database that you're like, hey, only a few people should be able to access, maybe you just put a view restrict on it and you make sure only trusted people can touch it. So if you're missing it, that might be why. Or very quickly, you're missing the permission to create content in the space. So back as a space admin under space access, it's all linked to the same pages, whiteboards, databases, and smart links. If you don't have add, you can't create these. You can still see them and interact and view them. You just can't make new ones. Or of course, if you're on data center. So I'm going to make a new one. I'm going to put it in my database folder to try and keep this demo space organized. And I'll just make a new database. And I'll have to move my giant floating head. Whee! And this is where I saw those options. I can link it to Jira or Confluence. And clicking this will let me search through Confluence to restrict what I want to see a little bit. So maybe I only want to see the content created by Rob. And then as I do this, I'll see what's in here. And maybe I'll keep narrowing it down, just stuff in the past 30 days. And maybe I want to change the fields that I get pulled in. I don't care about owned by because that's the person that created it, probably the owner. I want the space and everything else. Now, if I insert this will pull these all in his records, just these 8. I can do the same thing with Jira. So I can use filtering in JQL to figure that out. Liz, you are asking for a much more granular control over permissions. In general, if you can edit in Confluence, you have full access, which in most cases I appreciate. I feel like things should be open. If there are use cases where something needs to be sensitive with this tool, we have to look for other options like breaking it out or hiding it somewhere else. Write R product docs. Who is R in this case, Christian? Just curious if you can share with the group. I mentioned templates. Now, if I click on these, you'll notice it start to populate, and I'll get rid of my sidebar to give us more space. As I mentioned, these templates to me are minimal value, and that's only because I'm familiar with using the tool. But it populates in a whole bunch of stuff just so we can see what it looks like to have stuff in a database. So I take these either as starting points or as a way to quickly demonstrate what's going on. For example, here is the content library, as they call it. And this is just a different view of a different table. Thank you, Google. Martin, can I link in assets? I have not tried pulling in assets, my friend. Any jQuery function we can express, though, we should be able to use here. So I'll see if I can take that as a takeaway, because I'm looking at doing a session on AQL, Asset Query Language, and I'll see if I can add that. If we create using Jira, can we see what the JQL or JQuery Jira query language for the database was? I don't know. Let's find out right now. I'm going to quickly just make a database based on some tickets. And I'm going to pick the simplest thing I can find, and found nothing. Come on. Cool. So if I insert this, it's going to go and pull in all those tickets. And so this can be one way to let our teams more easily manipulate these things. Now, once it's created, I don't believe there's a way, Vicky, for us to see what the underlying JQL was. Like, there's no how was this generated, to my knowledge. It's not like with a page, I can see the template it was created by. And if I go up to more actions, I have a history. And it's not giving me... It's just showing what the database looked like at that point in time. Now, I do have a restore option, so similar to pages. Where's my magic marker? Here we go. Similar to pages, I can go back in time, but the history is only available for a month. But it does not show me, Vicky, that JQL that populated this database. April, I do not at this point. Martin, are the statuses real time? Let's go find out. This was to do. I'm going to make it in progress. I'm going to refresh. VA 14. So we just saw the status update on a linked Jira item. This would be true too for Confluence information we link in. Okay, got to back up here. You break both if you duplicate. I assume you refer to like restoring the database or making a copy of the same one. Anytime we fork information, we add a little bit of administrative burden. I think that's what you're talking about. I love all of these questions. I will not be able to get to all of them right now. I will do my best to follow up on them. A great spot is that Discord that I talked about earlier. And I'll try and pick through this. I'm seeing a lot of questions on assets, which I'm going to reserve to the end. Yaneli, I see your question, but I'll follow up on it because I want to keep just talking about the starting point of databases. Now, I mentioned in the slide deck, please rename them. The name field is up here, and for me, it's way too small, so I always forget to rename it. So I might call this like demo database. And I'm actually going to go make a whole new database and start it completely from scratch again, just so we can see the beginning. Yes, we do need a part the deux. Thank you, Rodney. A part two. So I'm going to start with just an empty database. You know, I could use these templates to figure it out, but if I start it blank, it gives me 3 fields, a text field, a tag field, and a user field. And this is where, for me, databases require a little more planning in some cases than other content types. I typically don't just fire up a database and start slamming in columns. I take time to get a bit of paper or something, or I get a whiteboard, and I kind of draw out, oh, what do I need to track? For the purpose of this example, I'm going to use a project, and I'm going to use project management because that's the thing I'm most comfortable with. My background's in it. I have all the fun flavors of certifications, blah, blah, blah. So it's easier for me to do an example. But just keep in mind, this is only one way to use it. So the first thing I think about is I need to track tasks. So I might just call this, instead of field name, task name. And then I can see I have options. I can change the field type. I don't want to do that. I can have a default value, which I don't need to do here. And I can add a description. Please always add descriptions. This makes it easier for other people to understand what's going on. It also makes it easier for you when you see it in the future, what you need to do or what it is. So future you will benefit from this. And you'll notice that that description shows up as a pop-up when you mouse over the name of the column. So it'll show up here. Task name, what the task is. So this helps your team out. The tag field has selectable items. You can think of this like a single select or a multi-select dropdown. So I might call this one my status. And I have a to-do status. And I have a in progress. I have a blocked. And, you know, done. And I can change the colors to make them, you know, look prettier. Cool. Each of these field types will have different options. In this case, I can allow multiple values. For a status, though, I don't want to do that. There might be other instances where I want to allow different values. And here I do want a default. I want to default new things to the to-do status. And here I'll also add a description. Now, some of you who use Jira might be saying, hey, Rob, you're just building Jira in a database, and you're kind of right. I use a database in project management for smaller projects. I also use a database when I have stakeholders who don't want to go into Jira for some reason, and it's another way to share information with them. I also use databases for other project management-y things. For example, risk management. I can build out a risk register in here that's very accessible and easy to use. Don't apologize, Kythra. Keep the discussions going. I love them. All right, I think I've caught up. My user field, this might become the assignee, and I can optionally notify them. So again, I'm thinking through what do I need as a project manager to track what's going on at this project. Now I also realize, hey, maybe I have Jira issues, so I can add a link to a Jira issue in here. And this might be, you know, like dev teamwork or something that relates to it. I'll connect it to a particular Jira instance. And again, I can allow multiple tickets. Maybe there's multiple Jira tickets that correspond to this particular thing. The other option I have for Jira is to pull in issue details. And this requires me to connect to a Jira ticket. So I'm telling it, hey, go into the dev team work field and use that work item. Hang on, I said the word. Whoopsies. I think I said it twice. Okay, up to 11 or 10. It's not fair because Atlassian hasn't changed the word here yet, and I see it on the screen and I just read it. I do a Ron Burgundy if anyone knows what that is. And then from here, I can pull in information from that work item. And this is most of the fields on it. So I'll pull in one that's probably going to be populated, assignee. Yes, Emily. Again, if Ron Burgundy is a character in a movie where he's a newscaster and he just reads whatever's on the teleprompter, and they end up putting some swear words and things. Um, Rodney, Trello is fine to say it's work item that I have problems still saying, or the word that work item replaced. The problem is, Emily, if I say it out loud, that's the problem. So here I can pull in fields off the Jira work items. Thank you. And now I have something I can start building, and I need to name it. I'll call this the JQuil or JQL project. And then I would just start populating it with tasks. Plan the project. So I would just start entering information in these columns. Assign the tasks. And this, again, is where the database is just a tool to support us in our work. We have to have, we have to have something we add to it. It'll give us the structure, give it a name, give it a status, an assignee, etc. But the system itself isn't going to know what that is. The other thing I'll point out about these, databases, like many features in Confluence, are constantly getting updated. So just be on the lookout for small updates. For example, commenting in a cell is relatively new. I can add a comment directly to this cell. Wasn't something we could do at the start. Here I can throw in a dev work item. Maybe I'll punch in VA14. The other thing, though, is because I'm linking back to Jira, I can add a new work item by clicking this button. So I can keep adding work items in. I can keep linking work item. Keep linking existing work items. There we go. Because I've allowed a multi-select in here. And here there's no assignee. Is there really no assignee on those tickets? So it's not pulling in anything. Here, I'll just assign these to myself just to make it do something. Okay. So I would just repeat this in filling them out. There we go. And so now I can see the assignees for these particular work items. And this will just update as the underlying work item updates. I can add new entries just by clicking new entry, and you'll notice the default kicked in. I had a default to-do state, and so that's automatically being added to my new records. Okay, good. The update is propagating through society. So there's a joke going on in the chat about work items and that word that starts with an I. Atlassian recently renamed, I'll say it, issues to work items. And it's causing a lot of gnashing of teeth and confusion because in some places they haven't updated it. You can see in the name of this. So if you hear that word that starts with an I and the word work item, they mean the same thing, basically a ticket in Jira. Now, Rodney and Kaithra are joking, what if we replace that word in regular speech? So Rodney's working on building a workflow for work iteming, issuing people new laptops. Here we have a database. And again, for the purposes of time, I won't add much more to this one. But there's other things I want to do to it. By default, there's a view, and that shows us everything. However, if I go up and edit this view, I can now do things like change the view itself. Maybe I want to see this as cards. Maybe I want to see it as a board. And this will save this as my preference. So if I copy this link and move away from it and come back, it's going to remember if I save it. Great way to demo things, Rob. Assuming I save the changes, there we go. This link will always return to this view, even if it changes. Vicky, if you click add entry, how does it know which epic it adds to? It has no idea. So here, these entries refer to rows in the database. So if I change my layout back to table, adding an entry adds a new row to the database. It does not add a new Jira work item. In here, if I click add work item, this is going through existing work items. It's not allowing me to generate a new one. So I have to type in a valid work item key. VA15 does not exist, so there's no options, but VA12 does. So in its current state, this is not intended to let me make new Jira work items. It's intended to allow me to grab existing ones and connect them to this particular row of this database. Now in here, I can group these differently. It has to be a tag. So again, there's some limitations in here, but you could have different tag fields on here, status, and then work category, and then other things. You have some other options in terms of making it look different, and you can add a cover image. You have to have an image on it. So again, this is more like a lightweight Kanban board, being able to move things around. That said, it is a way to help teams visualize information that does not require Jira. So if your organization doesn't have Jira, or you have people like I run into quite a bit who don't want to go into Jira, and I'm just sighing because that makes things frustrating. This is another way to give them access to this type of tool that's very easy and approachable. Just click and drag. And I can then add new columns here, and this essentially adds a new tag to that field. And I just did a stupid, I accidentally deleted the tag field, which I don't think they should allow me to do because it completely breaks everything. But let me very quickly put that back in here because I'm going to need it. I've got my to-do, add it in progress. I'll just say it done. Perfect. And quickly just give these something. Now, views are important because we can save them. And so I might have a view here that is just called in progress. And I want this to be a table so people can see it. And then I want to change, maybe I'll display the number of entries or display the entry number. So give myself a numbered column. Great. But then I can add in filters. And so I can add a filter in up at the top here is like a temporary one. But if I add it to the view, it's then permanently in the view. So I can just say my tag field is in progress. I create that filter, and now this only shows those in progress items or that have that. So if I save this, now there's an in progress view that everyone can access. And I can repeat this. Maybe I know my stakeholder really likes cards. So I say, okay, fine, I'll make you a card view of in progress. I can go through and create that. And now my stakeholder's happy because they see the information they want to see it. And my team's happy because they see it the way they want to see it. Now, one of these views will be the default. And that's the first one when someone opens the database. But all the rest, I can just keep listing them. In chat, if you're super bored, I'd be curious how many views we can create. But copying links to this and then giving it to the team is a way to make this information much easier to find and digest. Imagine a new joiner on your team who's like, hey, what's going on in this project? You can send them right to here and they can see the in-progress work or just the stuff assigned to them. Those kind of solves. Drop work in place for ALQL tracked items in Jira. Do you mean AQL, AQL, asset query language? All right, team, what questions do you have? We're running out of time. I am curious, though, if y'all want another general session on databases, or if there are targeted use cases for databases you want to see. Chad, I feel like we need an auto clicker and just turn it on overnight and see what happens. Really make the system scream. In the last few minutes, I will show you an example of connected databases, and I hope I have one set up. Oh, contacts, here we go. So this is the example I showed you earlier. This database here contains contacts. I've got Rob, Sally, and Susan, and they have a certification. But then they also have this assignments thing. Now, I can see this is a backlink. I've got this little backwards arrow. And if I open up the products database, I can see that Sally, Rob, and Sally show up in here. And these two that Sally are on correspond to the same two in contacts. Now, I might add a new entry. I have a new product D. These three values are being pulled in from a different database. So maybe now Susan gets an assignment, but Susan doesn't have a certification, so nothing shows up. So if I come back here, I can now see product D has been assigned to Susan. So this is that, I call it backlinking. If I add a new column, way at the bottom, I get the ability to link in information from other databases. And this is where I lack the practical use case to have a very good argument for when to use this other than a CRM. But this is a way to share information between them. I might have my team listed in here and multiple different project trackers floating around, and I link back to this to get their email, or I link back to this to get their expertise, or I link back to this to get their availability. Does changing the status in a database change it on the work item? No. All we're doing when we change, all we're doing in the card or board view when we move things around is changing the tag on the item. So for example, and this will be the last thing I demonstrate before, unfortunately, we got to jump off. I'll delete this real quick. If I'm looking at this, I've got 3 in progress and a to do. How do I don't have a tag field? Are you sure? Can't have multiple tags. There we go. All I'm doing when I move this from one column to another, even if there's Jira work items on it, is changing the tag from in progress to done. So again, this is not another way to manipulate Jira work items. This is a way to manipulate the database. And Rodney with that catchphrase, love it. All right, I have a complete 4-hour course about Confluence over on Udemy. I've mentioned early at the start. I have a total of like 31,000 students over there, which is crazy. But I put this Udemy course together because I realize there's a lot of basic skills that folks don't have when they start using Confluence, and this is intended to cover everything for users and admins. So project admins and general users will get a lot of value out this. This link will take you to a coupon code. Please feel free to share it. It's also in the chat. And it's also getting constant updates. I have to go through and refilm a lot of it because the UI decided to change. But I add additional lectures and additional lessons as time goes on, and that's all included if you choose to buy into it. Kath, you're welcome. The rest of this is recorded. Be on the lookout for more. So what's next? It sounds like I have to put together another database training. I had someone say, yes, another one will work. April, is there a specific use case you would like to see? Oh, I just see it right there. Create database using labels on pages. Interesting. The Confluence database life chose us. Yes, the CDL. So what's next? Check out Atlassian Community, community.atlassian.com. Lots of great folks in there, myself and many, many others. But also get hands-on. If you don't have access to cloud, you can get a free version, and I'll see if I can dig up a video on that real quick. But please go in and interact with Confluence. It's the best way to figure out how it works and to operate on it. But also check out my other content and check out others' content. There's a lot of great stuff out there. Alfonso, I don't have anything. Let me dig up the... do I have a playlist on databases? I think I do. I have a few existing videos on databases. Definitely take a look. And I'm continuing to add to it. And again, it's mostly based on what people want to see. But definitely go get hands-on and start tinkering with it. So start to experience the database. You'll get a feel for how it works, and then you can figure out what you need or want it to do. So please keep letting me know what topics you want. I'm trying to do one of these a week, not just on databases, but on anything. Keep talking to others and engaging with folks. And that's where that Discord can really help. That's live chat throughout the week. But talk to people at work. Share with them information. Tell them, hey, this Rob guy who uses Confluence showed me this cool trick. What do we think about it? Christian, thank you. Good to see you. So please keep engaging. There's a ton to these tools. We're forced to use them many times. So the more we can learn about them and the better we can get with them, the better we become, like the stronger we are. So thank you all so much for learning with me. I really appreciate you all taking time out of your day. Oh, we do, Rodney, don't we? But thank you all for joining me. I'll find out another database live session to do probably in a couple weeks, but be on the lookout for other live sessions from myself and others. I'll pick on Rodney here, has some great learning sessions on the certifications, but other folks are also sharing what they know. So it's definitely worth checking out. So thank you all again. Definitely check out the links in the channel, and looking forward to seeing y'all again here soon.